Hiya Steve, great as always to do some work on your game. The key issues that we're looking at initially in the session were, we've got a lot of good things going on the top left, but we're still holding on to the flex in the trail leg here, which in turn levels out the hips a little bit too much at P4, also leveling the shoulders, etc. Starts us looking a little bit more, sort of we can see more of the face at the top of the swing, and we start to get some of this sort of nasty forward bend being maintained in the thoracic area. So, you know, not a great deal of extension going on, trying to work the lead shoulder down, trying to prevent the club creeping behind us during the early part of the swing, and also trying to sort of control what the elbows are doing, particularly from P1 to P2. As you can see there, as you take the club away, we hold on to the flex in the right knee for too long. It actually gains flex from P2 to P4, which is leveling out the hips, the shoulders, and pushing the club behind you too much. So that's the first thing that we wanted to try and sort of remedy. And what you can see here on the bottom left is you trying to max this out. Now, the feeling that you had during the session that really worked was that you were pushing into the ground with the right foot. So the pressure's going into the right foot, straightening the right leg, keeping the right hip up, creating a gap between the knees. You can see there's much more straightening and flexing of the legs, and in turn the hips are turning on a much more tilted angle. This is one of your early swings down on the bottom left, so we've not quite made a full swing at that point, but we're trying to get it in there in quite a short space of time. You can see that the shoulders are on a different pitch at P4 as well, and the vision is much more down at the golf ball as opposed to out in front of the golf ball. From the position you're in at the top, where you don't get rid of the flex in the right leg, the tendency from there now is to get the belt. Let's put that line back on. We get the belt raising pretty quick as we change direction. Little bit of flex going back in the lower body. You can see the level of the belt raising too fast. Right heel popping up. A lot of extension going on. And hitting out at the golf ball a little bit too excessively. With the trail leg straightening, the hips now get back into flexion a little bit more appropriately. We're regaining the flex in the lower body before pushing up from P6 onwards. We're actually adding flex for longer on that one. You can see the difference in that, a marked difference. This was, like I say, early in the piece, and we've not worked on the extending through. It's just one of your rehearsal swings. But a much better extending of the trail leg, the pelvis and the torso, followed by regaining a flexion. And you can see the effect it's had here. We've got rid of that forward bend. We're not leaning away from that line as much. We're in a slightly different condition with the hips. We're starting to see a little bit of side bend in the hips, as opposed to the right hip being lower than the left. Pushing up very quick, head coming back, pushed up a little bit quicker, but head not hanging back as much. Moving forward a little bit more through the hip. Releasing the head a little bit better. Also as the session went on. Like I say, a lot of good stuff in this swing. It just needs a few little things tidying up. So allowing the trail leg to straighten was the first part, and that had a knock-on effect with the hips, the shoulders, the arms, etc. The next part of your session was controlling what that right heel was doing. Because of things that have gone on in the past where the shaft's set very steep on the way down, and there's been a tendency to get the club out in front of the hands at P6. There's always had to be a real fast extension through the ball, where the right heel pops up, the belt raises very, very quickly. You can see on your early swing on the top left, it was actually raising the minute you started your downswing, all in an attempt to prevent the club coming across the ball excessively. So you're trying to add a little bit of into out through the hip. With the hips turning on a tilted angle, we've got the club laid across the heel, or laid across the foot, should I say, trying to calm down what's happening with that right heel. So we want to try and just introduce a little bit more of a gradual extension. You can see there that the heel not popping up quite as much, starting to roll a little bit more through the hip, rather than popping up very quickly through the hip, which is what we saw at the start of the session. So what we've got here is a really quick extension, just sort of pushing up out the ground very, very hard, very, very fast. Right heel popping up, as opposed to working upwards, but also rolling inwards. You can see we don't hit out at the ball quite as much when we do that. We want the extension, it's a good piece, but we want a gradual extension rather than a sort of dramatic one as you're coming through the hip to prevent the club going across the golf ball. You can see if we just take you back to P6. Club's in a much more in line position than it's ever been, particularly on this one here. So the delivery of the club into the ball is much more in line than it's ever been before. So we've got to keep straightening that right leg off on the way back, and we've got to control that extension and that popping up of the right heel on the way through. Good luck with it. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a buzz.